Also, I am the CEO for Random Dynamic Resources, a marketing social opinion research company. I'll be moderating these sessions. First, WAPOR stands for World Association of Public Opinion Research, with secretariat at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Department of Political Science in Lincoln, Nebraska, in the United States. WAPOR has regional chapters in different continents. We have WAPOR Latin America, we have WAPOR Asia Pacific, we have WAPOR West Asia and North Africa, which is otherwise called WANA. And then we have WAPOR Sub-Saharan Africa, who is the anchor for this webinar. We have a secretariat in Nairobi, Kenya. For more than 70 years, the World Association of Public Opinion Research has promoted the highest professional standard, ethics, and techniques for polling around the world through publications, conventions, seminars, webinars, meetings, and educational initiatives. We engage in a rich ongoing conversation about how best to collect data and to maintain data quality, not just in advanced democracies like the United States, but in emerging democracies like Nigeria. So we want to center our discussion today, our conversation, on Nigerian elections, because as we know, Nigeria is such an important country, not only for the African continent, but also for the entire world. I mean, we have over 200 million people, the seventh most populous country in the world. 20% of African population is captured, is within Nigerian domain. And we know the tempo of our democratic journey resumed in 1999. And since then, we have had successive democratic governments unbroken. It is a very big feat for us, considering the fact that Nigeria used to be a very coup-prone country. So the 2023 election is a defining moment for us and Africa, because if we get it right, the whole of Africa will be on a march to positive things to come. Our discussion will also help us to understand the various scenarios that portend for Nigeria, depending on who wins. Is it PDP? Is it APC? Is it Labour Party? Is it NPP? And other 18. All of them have potential to win. The 18 presidential aspirants and parties who are fielding candidates. Here we have expert panelists from different walks of life, from different professional backgrounds, and from different countries around the world. I will, at this stage, only mention their names and also what they do and which country they come from. Later, I will give a brief bio of each of them shortly before each makes his or her own presentation. First, permit me to introduce Dr. Robert Chung. He is the president of WAPOR Global and also the founder of Hong Kong Public Opinion Research Institute. Dr. Robert will discuss the importance of opinion research and scientific data in elections. Lesson from Hong Kong, if any. Dr. Chung has wielded so many distractions, so many disturbances, so many persecutions, even from the government. So he has a very strong and a very large experience, okay? Because we say in Africa, opinion poll is a little bit is emergent. Next we have, Dr. Chung, please welcome. Welcome to the webinar. Next we have Ms. Angela Mbito. Angela is the president of WAPOR South Southern African chapter and the founder of InfoTrack Research and Consulting based in headquarters in Kenya. Angela will set the stage for our discussion. She will give some highlights about polls in Nigeria election and touch point on 5 pillars of our discussion today. Angela, you're welcome. We also have Barrister Sonny Ekwowusi. Barrister Sonny is the chair of Human and Constitutional Rights Committee of African Bar Association. He is the principal partner of Sonny Ekwowusi and Co., legal practitioner and a notary public. He will discuss the youth question in this election, because we know that 9.65% of registered voters belong to the age 18 to 34. And also the ancillary youths, those who are between the age of 35 to 49, account for 35% of registered voters. So you see that the youth peripherally actually controls more than 70, up to 70%. So Sonny will give us the youth question, this reawakening. And then we will move to, so Sonny, you're welcome. We also have Mr. Niola Bello. Mr. Niola is the managing director of This Day newspapers. He will talk on the importance of communication and media in presidential campaigns. We've had issues where some sections of political parties are saying that some sections of the media seems to be compromised. So which didn't go well with so many people. So depending on which aspect they are looking at. So we'll hear him talk about this and then give us more highlights and give us more in-depth analysis of the importance of communication and media in presidential campaigns. We fly to Ghana to introduce Mr. Peter McMahon. Mr. McMahon was a former national chairman for New Patriotic Party, NPP in Ghana. For they are the current ruling party in Ghana. He is currently the board chair of Ghana and Harbour Authority. And we'll be discussing the winning strategies in an election like this. We will listen to his views and assessment of top 3 contenders of Nigerian elections. Mr. McMahon, welcome. We now move back to Nigeria to introduce Dr. Ruben Abati. Dr. Abati is a journalist, a columnist, a TV anchor. For some of you that watch Arise TV, we see his face every morning on the morning show. So Dr. Abati is a household name in the media sector in Nigeria and was a former senior special assistant on media for former President Goodluck Jonathan. Dr. Abati will give us an overview of the Nigerian elections and why this particular election, this 2023 election, why it's different from others. We'll hear his view on what Nigeria outlook will be on economy, for example, if depending on who wins the election. Dr. Abati, you're welcome. Next, we introduce Dr. Franklin. He is the Director of Public Sector Initiative at Lagos Business School, Pan-Atlantic University, which is formerly Pan-African University. He is an Associate Professor of Strategy, Corporate Governance, and Risk Management. Dr. Ngu will help us to understand the importance of good governance, the issues of corruption, and how the perception of the electorate play out in this election. And finally, we move back to Kenya to introduce Ms. Pamela Sitoni. She is the Executive Editor, Daily Nation, which is one of the leading newspapers in Kenya. She has served as Managing Director of the Nation's Media Group. Ms. Pamela, welcome. So once again, welcome everyone. Our attendees come across different geographies. We have attendees from Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, Ivory Coast, United States, Germany, UK. So the speakers, you are feel free to discuss these issues. Like we say in research, there are no right or wrong answers. We are only interested in your opinion. So there will be a plenary Q&A session after the presentation. The audience, you can feel free to write into your questions in the box or Q&A, or we'll give you the microphone. Just all we need is for you to have your digital hand raised up so that we know and we maintain some kind of order. Once again, my name is Paul, and I'm happy to be here and to anchor these sessions. Right now, I think we need to move pretty fast so that we can take time. Every speaker has 10 minutes to make your presentation or discussion, your views. But don't do that in a hurry. Just don't want to have fun. Okay. And if you have any questions, just write it down and then wait for the time for us to do it. So now I will have the pleasure to bring in the president of WAPOR SSA for her own discussions presentation. Angela? Angela, you're on mute.
But can you see? You can see my presentation screen?
Yep, clear. We see this.
Right.
I can see it. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And greetings from Nairobi. It's scorching hot, but I think it's hotter in Nigeria where change is looming. So we're very excited to be here, to be part of the discussions. Paul, you were unfair in your introduction to me because you know that you and I have been together working in Lagos for the last 12 years. So indeed, I'm partially Nigerian. The only thing that I don't have is a voter's card. But I will be with you in spirit, and you can see that I am indeed donning the colors that pertain to our flag. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here. Mine is very simple. It's to set the stage, is to invoke thought. Having worked on various elections, I'm glad Peter McMahon is here. We've worked with him on Ghanaian elections, 2 consecutive election cycles, elections of which he has successfully won. And Peter, you should tell them that polls were very critical in helping you win because they provided you with the pertinent information. So what I intend to do is basically just give you some numbers to just, evoke the thinking, get us to understand, especially for those of us who are generally not from the region or from the country. As Paul has mentioned, massive country, 93.5 million registered voters currently, 18 presidential candidates, 15,000 plus contestants, 774 LGAs, 8,809 wards, and believe it or not, 176,846 polling centers. So INEC, the electoral body, has its work cut out for it. If any country is seeing this now, we just finished an election in Kenya, and we were talking about 40,000 plus, but under 50,000 polling stations, and it was no mean feat to actually ensure that the logistics for that particular election were expedited properly. So you can imagine just what INEC, which is the electoral body mandated to do the work in Nigeria, has to actually, work on to ensure that everybody who wakes up on Saturday gets to vote. And you can indeed see there that 80% who have been interviewed, we have just basically looked at various polls, currently say that they have the intention to vote, with 60% odd of those saying they will definitely go to the polls.
Let's go.
And what we are seeing is that there are many things that will obviously be dictating why people go to the polls. I just put that map there for those who are not Nigerian to understand the expanse of this country. There are 5 core regions, there are 35 states plus FCT Abuja, which you can see in the middle there, which is the administrative capital, but also gets a governor. So, massive in its nature. In terms of the voter statistics, what I have seen is that if you garner these 3 states, you're probably on a clear path to victory. Lagos has 7 million registered voters. Kano has 5.9 million voters. And Kaduna has the 3rd largest vote-rich state with 4.3 million voters. What you will see from INEC here, these are INEC statistics, and maybe you won't be able to, so I'll read them out, but not all of them, is that most of the other states, and I'd mentioned that there are 35 plus Abuja, have about 2 million odd registered voters to each state. So indeed, one can garner votes from those ones, but the contestant who will be able to decisively get Lagos, decisively get Kano and Kaduna, will probably be laughing to Abuja and sitting in the capital. It's a big election, like I mentioned. INEC has its work out for it. And what is the trust for INEC on INEC right now? 80% intend to vote, 60% trust INEC. Is that good? Perhaps going into election, you want better trust in an electoral body. But I think looking at the trust that we see from other countries that have carried out elections, this is perhaps the number that one would be expecting. It certainly is over. So majority currently trust INEC. And there are also, statistics there. We, the girls and women, are indeed going to vote just as much as the males. We are 47.5% of that 93 million vote. And the males are just slightly higher at, 52.5%. What we're also seeing is that there is quite a large youth vote. And I'm hoping that the panelists will be able to tell us whether this time round, the youth will actually be the deciding factor. We did see that in the last election when the president, the current incumbent, was seeking a second term, the youth were probably not as, involved in that election as ought to have been. Why do I say that? I say that because when I look at voter turnout, and these are statistics that you probably want to keep in mind, we have said 80% intend to vote. And last time when we were doing polling, the numbers were more or less the same, very high intention to vote. However, when push came to shove, in 2015, only 44% turned out to vote. In 2019, it was worse. Only 35% turned out to vote. Now, it is critical to understand these numbers because the numbers that go out to the polls will in the end determine who is elected. You may have a very popular candidate, but if the voter turnout is low, that candidate may not get an opportunity. So what's the state of the nation? Where are we at right now as Nigeria? 70% think the country is headed in the wrong direction. That's high. So the clamor and need for change must be beckoning more than we can perhaps feel wherever we are in other parts of the continent. What are the key issues? There's insecurity. There are those who want to secede, like the Biafra. There is the Boko Haram that has still had its problems, especially in the north. And there have been the kidnappings that have also, exacerbated the issue of security in the country. But the economy, and I remember Bill Clinton once said, it's the economy, stupid. But economy is going to be a critical thing. As we speak, because of the transition and change of the Naira, most of us who actually operate in Nigeria will tell you that there is a shortage of currency. Indeed, today, if you tried to get money from the bank, you probably will not be able to get Naira. The problems with unemployment, especially youth unemployment, have been exacerbating since the last two elections. And the question that will be abound is which candidate will be able to solve this problem and solve it for a country that is so rich in resources and so rich in the people that they have and the skills that they are abound and the potential. But the third thing that we know, so jobs and economy for me are the same because that's employment. The third key issue of concern, therefore, that has been seen across the polls is good governance and corruption. The question will be, out of the three top candidates, which candidate will decisively or convincingly be able to deal with this animal that is plaguing almost all countries in our African continent? And that is something that will, be critical. That is just a slide that shows you the percentages. I will not belabor on them, but it is we picked it up from NOI poll. And what it is demonstrating to you is that whilst those three issues are the main ones, there are many other issues. There's infrastructure. Paul, when we spoke earlier, said to me, do you have your generators backup? And we, innocently said no, because we don't have as bad the power cuts that probably are now plaguing Nigeria and plaguing the southern part of Africa. But electricity, therefore, you can see there is a fourth key issue of concern, because many people have to have their generators on standby when they, as we say in Nigeria, when they off the power, when they take the power. But there is also infrastructural problems. We can see water supply at 23%, poverty at 22%, which is part of economy, and all these other social things that we are seeing there. But also there's the issue of food security. Now to the crux. This is why we're here. What are the polls saying in terms of popularity? Currently, we have three key contenders. We have the kingmaker, Bola Tinubu, who is the luminary and his flagship candidate for APC, the current ruling party. We then have Abubakar Atiku, who has also been in government. He was deputy at some point to Obasanjo. And then we have former Governor Peter Obi, who is the youngest of the three candidates at 61 years of age, and is being perceived to be the disruptive candidate. He comes from a smaller party, the Labour Party, and the question is, will the Labour Party have the wherewithal in terms of resources, in terms of manpower? And Peter, perhaps you will be able to tell us this, to protect the vote. There's one thing to excite the public and to excite voters, but will he be able to protect the vote? These are the numbers from different polls. We just picked out, and it's almost like fall of polls. If you look at next year's Bloomberg NOI polls, you see that Tinubu is ranging between 13% for some polls, 12%, and then his highest number is 24%. Abubakar Atiku is ranging from 25% to 10%. And then we see Peter Obi, who with some polls like Bloomberg poll, he is at 66%. With Steers poll, he's at 41%. But NOI poll puts him at 21%. INAP Foundation puts it at 23%. Your guess is as good as mine, but we can see that with certain polls, one candidate stands out. So as the panelists start, sharing with us their thoughts based on their experiences, my food for thought, therefore, would be, this is a country yearning for change. Will they, therefore, as the largest country in the continent, decisively come out on Saturday? Will the 80% result in 100% of the 80 turning out? Or will we result in having just 44% turnout, which would mean that majority didn't decide and democracy would be then perhaps be blamed for being an ass as we usually blame it? The second thing is, will this disruptive candidate who deliver the change that is being clamored for? We have seen in other parts of the continent that disruption is the name of the game. So will Peter Obi take the day? He has definitely excited the populace. The question remains, does he have the planning and infrastructure to protect the vote? And Pam, you must tell us what the Kenyan experience was with regards to transition and contested elections and protecting of the vote. So, Viva Nigeria, we are with you, we are watching, and we are hoping for a peaceful election for you. We see that the trust in the election is there. People are yearning for peace, and we know that Nigeria will set the stage for what happens in the rest of the continent. Over to you, Peter. Good luck, panelists.
Very well. Thank you, Angela. By the way, Nigeria, we have 36 states. I told you that you have to be eating about to know. We have 36 states and the capital. That's fine. That's
So
fine.
36 plus FCT. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for your powerful presentation. We'll move quickly to our second discussant. I would like to bring in Dr. Abati. For the benefit of doubt, those who were not available when I made the first introduction, brief introduction, I'm going to just recap in 30 seconds. Dr. Abati is a highly cerebral achiever of proven ability with extensive professional experience, both in the public and private sector, whose core competence cover design, management of communication structures and process, in-depth analysis of concept and issues, media and government relations. Okay, he holds a PhD in theater arts, specializing in dramatic literature, theory and criticism from the University of Ibadan, a certificate in management and leadership from the said business school, then also University of Oxford, that's 2015, among others. He was a former chair editorial board of Guardian newspapers and served as a Guardian editorial page editor and a columnist. Dr. Bati has received many prizes of journalistic excellence, including four-time winner, Haj Alade Odneu Diamond Award for Media Excellence, a prize for informed commentary, and so many other ones. He was appointed special advisor, media and publicity as official spokesperson to the president, former President Goodluck Jonathan. He is currently the anchor of Arise TV's The Morning Show. Dr. Bati, the microphone is with you. Welcome. You're on mute.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, clear. Yeah.
Okay. First, thank you very much, Paul, for that introduction, and thank you, Angela, for helping to set the stage. What I intend to do, briefly, if I exceed the 10 minutes, just call me to order. I tend to talk and talk and talk once you give me the microphone, is to respond to some of the issues raised by Angela. The first is voter turnout. Voter turnout will be a major area of concern, as she pointed out. Hello? Voter turnout will be a major area of concern. She was expecting that we'll probably have a voter turnout of 44%, which was the figure that we recorded in 2015. In 2019, she pointed out that we recorded 35%, actually 35.6%. And the whole idea is that this election, the one that will occur on February 25 with 18 candidates, with 4 major candidates, as it were. I'll come to that later because she said 3. Now, the thing is, can we get anything even close to 35.6%? Why do I say so? The same problem that she identified, the threat of violence, insecurity. The National Security Council met yesterday, and the result, members resolved. The Inspector General of Police made assurances. The National Security Advisor, INEC, they said, look, we're ready for this election. But are they actually ready? Because the biggest threat that this election faces is violence, is insecurity. Let's take, for example, the situation in the Southeast, where a number of the groups, the indigenous peoples of Biafra, they say they are not interested in this election. What they want is referendum. There are other groups from that part of the country, the Ohanese Indigo, the Alaigbo Foundation, MASO, the Movement for the Survival of the People of Biafra. All of them saying, look, they don't want to stop this election. The election should go on. But there is another group there, a faction, led by a gentleman, well, I don't know whether a gentleman is right, who is based in Finland, who says that there must be no election not just in the southeast, which is the area that the Biafran agitators claim, but it says from Warri to Ughelli. Warri and Ughelli, they are in the Midwest. All the way to Ahoda in the south-south. Uyo, Ikorekpene, Eket, Calabar. So this Simon Ekpa, who is a Biafran agitator, in diaspora, is not just saying elections must not hold, he is claiming other territories within Nigeria. That is going to be a major challenge because in previous elections, it has taken very strong willpower in off-cycle elections, particularly in Anambra State, for the Nigerian state to be able to stop these factional agitators. So we have to measure what will be the level of the threat by that faction of the IPOB in the southeast, even stretching its influence to the south-south. Why is insecurity also a major problem? Yes, the National Security Council says we have all the wherewithal. President Buhari also said so last Thursday. But do they have the wherewithal? Between 1999 election and now, there have been over 50 attacks on INEC facilities, on security agents, on party operations. I am not aware, maybe other commentators will correct me if I'm wrong, of any arrest or prosecution that has been successfully pursued. So is this same Nigerian state that is saying that it can guarantee security during this election? So there is a fear of violence. We have established violence before the election, as illustrated by the examples I have cited. Only yesterday in Enugu, the candidate of the Labour Party, senatorial candidate of the Labour Party in Enugu East, was not only murdered, he was set ablaze in broad daylight. In the South-South, in Port Harcourt, media houses were attacked. So 2 days to the election, the security situation is a very serious one. And the issue is that it could have implications for voter turnout. Well, it's the people who come out that will vote and elect the president. But it could also have issues for legitimacy. So those are two major challenges that I think Nigeria faces at this very time. Now, Angela also talked about the key persons who are in the front corner of the race. Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, 76 years old. He's been vice president before, 1999 to 2007. This is his fourth time running to be president of Nigeria. He claims to have experience. He's talking about privatization. He's talking about agriculture. He's talking about providing opportunities. Then you have Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whom she also identified. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, yes, how old is he now? 70. Now, he had been governor twice. He had also, been a power broker in Nigeria. And he says it is his turn. He campaigns on the basis of a policy of entitlement, and also on his record as two-time governor for 8 years in Lagos State. And also he claims that President Buhari was installed by him. But the major minus that he has is that he's running on a Muslim ticket. So that takes us to the next issue of concern, religion. Religion is going to be a major issue in this election. Would the Christian community in Nigeria, who represent about 50% of the population, would they vote for a Muslim ticket as compared to the PDP ticket that is Muslim Christian, the Peter Obi ticket, Labour Party ticket that is Muslim Christian, even the Kwankwanso ticket that is Muslim Christian. So religion is likely to play a part in this election. Okay, to further respond to some of the issues raised by Angela. Angela asked the question, will Peter Obi, the disruptive candidate, take the day? Given the excitement that he has generated, given the, does he have the planning and the infrastructure? She asked. Okay, well, yes, Peter Obi, former governor of Anambra State, two-time, governor for 8 years, appears to be very popular, but with a section of the demographics, with the young people of Nigeria, the NSAS protesters of 2020, and all those young people who are aggrieved with the situation in Nigeria and who say they want a new Nigeria. And Peter Obi has bought into that rhetoric. He has built it up to galvanize a movement of persons who are aggrieved in Nigeria. If you look at the demographics in this election, people between 18 to 34, they constitute almost 40% of the voting population. If you add to the people who are up to 49, 35 to 49, they constitute 35.7%. So the youths are likely to play a major role in this election. But the question that I ask is that many of these young people, you can stretch it, 18 to 49, do they have PVCs? Collecting PVCs, which is the only instrument that is recognized by the BVAS, which is a bimodal verification for voters. Many young Nigerians could not get it. They went to wards, they went to local governments for more than 2 weeks. So they've been constructively disenfranchised. Even students who had registered in certain places, they couldn't get their PVCs. Now they've been told that schools have been shut down, but do they have the tool which way they can vote? Many of them do not. So that's a major minus for Peter Obi. In Inewi North, in Anambra State, 2 days ago, a hunter went into the forest. My knowledge of hunting is that hunters in Africa, they go there to go and kill antelope, kill rabbits, and bring home to the community. This particular hunter went to the forest. He came back with a bag full of permanent voters' cards that were found in the forest that have been dumped there. Those are voters. But some people, Authority FM and some others, they've raised they've blown the whistle and they are trying to assist people to have access to those PVCs. Maybe many of those PVC owners, they will vote for Peter Obi. Now, in the Southeast, which is the stronghold of Peter Obi, you have Simon Ekpa saying nobody should come out. The Inspector General of Police has fixed 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for curfew. The period that is fixed by Simon Ekpa covers more than that. Simon Ekpa has said nobody must come out for 24 hours. Will the security agencies be able to address that? One more point on Peter Obi. The major criticism against him is that he does not have the structure. Because at the moment, if you look at all the seats that are up for consideration in the election on Saturday, over 4,000 seats, Angela has already provided the statistics. In the National Assembly, you have 360 in the House of Reps. You have 109 in the Senate, 469 in that National Assembly, 18 presidential candidates. The Labour Party has no candidate in the National Assembly, has no candidate sitting in the Assembly as a member of the party, as a representative of the people, out of the 469. So people say, even if Peter Obi succeeds in disrupting and he wins, he can be impeached in less than 2 months. That's the calculation. So in my view, now I want to express personal opinion, moving beyond what Angela submitted, is that one, this election will be determined a lot by those issues that we have identified: ethnicity, religion, violence, insecurity. Still the same major problems that whoever becomes president of Nigeria must address. Two, I think, and that's my personal opinion, that this is going to be a straight fight between the APC and the People's Democratic Party. However, I think that the Labour Party may well or would put up a good showing. Peter Obi, Labour Party, both have been able to create a momentum, a movement, and the harvest may not be now. The concrete harvest may not be now. It may be in the future. So Peter Obi may well be a man to watch for the future. Some people say Peter Obi may be able to force a runoff under Section 134 of the Constitution. I don't see the possibility of that happening, given the level of desperation. Number three, the Nigerian people, they are very enthusiastic. Seventh cycle, they want to make a change. I should wrap up. Okay, but the turnout will be a function of the level of security, the rate of violence, not just before, as we have seen, but also during and also after. In many parts of Nigeria, when there is election season like this, people are rushing to go and stockpile food because they say, oh, if things go wrong, we should sit at home. Half of the middle class, the heavily compromised elementary middle class in Nigeria, half of them are probably, left the country to go and watch from outside. So you have a country facing a watershed moment in its history, but I think the support of the international community is important. Everyone is here, the EU observation mission, the African Union, the Commonwealth, the US mission, the UK observers. Maybe that will serve some purpose in restraining Nigerians from further violating the peace accord that the political parties have now signed twice. Thank you for inviting.
I agree. Thank you very much, Dr. Bati, for your incisive presentation. And I believe that some people will come back to you during the Q&A plenary for so many questions. Okay, so now we'll quickly move to our next speaker. We are going to fly to Kenya. They want to know, learn some lessons from Kenya. They just finished their elections a few months back. Ms. Pam Sitoni will be talking on how to deal with contested elections and smooth transition. She has clamored for the hustler, the common man mentality. The notion started yielding fruit, or it's just for the future, for the hot air. So, what are the facts and realities? For those who were not here when I made a brief introduction, Ms. Pamela Sitoni is a Kenyan journalist with more than 20 years experience. She's currently the executive editor of Daily Nations, one of the frontline newspapers in Kenya. She was named the laureate for Women in News Editorial Leadership Award for Sub-Saharan Africa by the World Association of Newspapers, the One Infra. She's a member of the World Editorial Forum, and also she holds a BA Literature and Anthropology and a postgraduate diploma in communication from the University of Nairobi, and a master's in New Media Democracy from the University of Leicester in the UK. The microphone is with you, Ms. Pamela. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. That's a long introduction. Thank you for organizing this webinar and for giving me an opportunity to share a bit about our own Kenyan experience and some of the lessons that I think Nigeria could take from Kenya. So as we've heard from Angela's presentation and the follow-up from Dr. Abati, these are going to be the most hotly contested elections. He's told us there's a fourth, I've also learned that there's a fourth black horse in the race, so it's not quite definite that it's just 3 horses. One journalist actually captured this unpredictability of the situation by just saying, we don't know what is going to happen. And I think Nigeria is at that point where we really don't know who's going to win. We don't know what's going to happen, despite the numbers that we have seen. So I was thinking about it and I thought, perhaps if I talked a bit about what Kenya has gone through, there might be some lessons that Nigeria can pick. As most of you know that in 2007 and 2008, Kenya almost disintegrated because of a disputed presidential election. And since that time, we have gone through a series of contested elections. In fact, none of the elections we've held every 5 years has gone uncontested. And so I would like to share just 8 lessons that I think we have picked up from that. The first lesson is that transparency can make the whole difference. In 2007, when Kenya almost broke apart because of the post-election violence that followed a disputed election, the chairman of our own electoral commission, his name was Kivuitu, he actually faced the cameras and said he did not know who won the election. So you can imagine what kind of situation that is when the person who's conducting the election, leading the election, says they do not know who won the election. And we have come a long way from that, with the Electoral Commission improving on transparency. And I think the height of their show of transparency was in the last election that we had in 2022, last year, when the commission put all the forms from the polling stations on a public portal for every interested person to tally. Unfortunately, even with that transparency, we saw that same commission split at the very end of the result, and that created some doubt over the veracity of those elections. And as most of you know, then that matter ended up in court. But for the first time, Kenyans had actually witnessed what we can say were the most transparent elections. The second lesson is that courts can be a stability fortress. Again, in 2007, when we had post-election violence, it's because there was very little trust in the courts. And so the aggrieved parties just went out on a riot, and we ended up in deaths that were unnecessary, and a lot of violence and displacements of large populations of people. But after that, we then had, went through a season, we had a new constitution, we set up a Supreme Court. And the next contested elections in 2013, 2017, and 2022 all ended up in court. But it's because the candidates now had, and the Kenyans had, confidence in the Supreme Court to arbitrate the contested elections, and therefore the country then did not break into violence. So a trusted court system can save the day. My third lesson is that independent, free, and professional media actually empowers voters, helps the peace agenda, and can heal the nation if trouble starts. And a case study here is since the 2007 elections, when again we had a journalist end up at the International Criminal Court at The Hague, the Kenyan media has become very careful in how it covers the elections, so that it does not cover the elections in a way that incites people against each other. And the Kenyan media actually would check any politicians trying to spew hate speech, and that responsible coverage calms down the country and ensures that peace prevails even when temperatures are rising. My third lesson is independent monitoring inspires confidence. And again, we've seen over time in Kenya, where when monitoring of elections is allowed and people are free to even tabulate the numbers, go to the ground and see the results for themselves and tabulate those numbers, watch the counting, it inspires trust and confidence in the exercise. In Kenya, for example, last year we had a group called the Election Observation Group, ELOG. It produced its own results. It had a parallel tallying system and it produced its own results, and those results matched those of the Electoral Commission with just a margin of error of between 0.1 and 2.1%. And that report, when the case ended up in the Supreme Court of the contested election, that report was one of the documents that were produced in court to show that the electoral IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission results could be trusted, because there was a parallel result that was similar to that one. The other lesson I have to share is that the candidates themselves hold the key to peace. And again, after the bloodshed of 2007, where the leading candidates, some of our leading candidates ended up at the ICC, we have seen a general improvement in how candidates relate with their electorate, the things they say to the electorate during the elections, and some level of responsibility in the campaigns. So, for example, we have right now the opposition candidate who lost. He has been holding rallies and just complaining about the fact that his vote was stolen. But you get a sense of restraint in how he's going about it. He's not telling people go to the streets and destroy property or, you know, attack anybody. He's just talking about the issues, and then those campaigns are peaceful and they protest and they go back home and the country moves on. Another lesson is that incumbents who want to choreograph their own succession, almost always in Kenya, they end up losing. So I don't know what the case is going to be in Nigeria, but for Kenya, in 2002, we saw President Moi come up with the Project Uhuru Kenyatta at that time. And it turned out that that was just not the candidate of the people, and he lost miserably. And again, last year, we saw the then incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta endorsing Raila Odinga, and he lost miserably. So it is not always that if the incumbent endorses somebody, then he will win. It really has to do a lot more with the candidate and how they're relating with the electorate. Another lesson is technology. As much as I've talked about the transparency and how it showed transparency, but it's only as good as the people who use it. Because even though we had the numbers that came out of the technology that the IEBC deployed during the 2022 elections, there are still claims that those results were hacked. There are still claims that the results were changed at the last minute. So the human interface there with the election is also important. And if you don't have honest people manipulating the technology, it can still be used to deny people their will. Another lesson is
Angela,
I'll finish in 2 minutes. Another lesson is what Angela referred to as the system to protect votes. So traditionally in Kenya, actually, Kenyans vote very peacefully. The queues are well organized. The voters are peaceful, but trouble starts when it gets to the transmission of the results. And that's when people start to doubt the system. And so one of the lessons here that we've learned is that a candidate can mobilize all the voters, but they also must have the ability to protect their votes, because the law ensures that once the vote is counted at the polling station, it cannot change. That result cannot change, and it becomes very difficult to contest it. So the only place where rigging can happen effectively is at the ballot box. And if you do not have the agents to protect your vote, then you lose unfairly to a competitor. And I think lastly, I'll just talk about the issue of that Angela referred to about appealing to the young people. We see the obedience movement in Nigeria as a real parallel with what we had in Kenya. We had the Hustler Nation, and then candidate William Ruto mobilized his young people with a promise of a very good life. He was opposed to what he was calling dynasties, the people who have grown up with political power, and he presented himself as this hustler who was raised by a peasant farmer who had to sell chicken along the road to just eke out a living. And many young people followed him in droves on account of that. He sold hope, which I see that Obi also is selling in Nigeria to the young people. Well, he won the election. The Hustler Nation won the election. But I can tell you that in Kenya, 5 months after the election, we have a very large population of people, and especially young people, who are still jobless, who cannot make a living, who cannot earn a living. And this is the population that is now rising up together with the loser of the election to say that Dr. Ruto promised them a better life, but life has become costlier, and they want him to lower the cost of living and do things that he practically does not have the ability to do. So sometimes the promises of hope can end up actually, as Angela says, just selling you hot air. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for your insight into the Kenya scenario, Ms. Sitoni. I believe there are some people who have questions for later in the program. Let's quickly move to Ghana. At the desk of Mr. Peter McMahon, I introduced him earlier. He has won 2 elections under the national. He was national chairman of a new patriotic party in Ghana in 2026 and also in 2020. So he's an astute politician, but currently he chairs the Ghana Ports and Harbor Authority. So, Mr. McMahon, we want to learn from you. What are the winning strategies one can, having won 2 consecutive elections, how are elections won? And then what is important? The importance of this, what will be an assessment of the 3 contending parties, or 4 of them, okay? Because we have APC, we have, out of the 18, there are front runners, the APC, PDP, Labour Party, and ANPP. So what will be our assessment in respect of getting to vote to securing a decisive win? Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon, you are mute. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a very exciting discussions this afternoon. And I am glad and honored to be part of this webinar. Nigeria and Ghana, and for that matter, ECOWAS, we share so many things in common, particularly the English-speaking part. And whatever affects Nigeria, who is the leader of ECOWAS by virtue of its economy, the population, etc., has effect, a rippling effect on the rest of West African countries. So everybody within the sub-region is looking at what is going to happen on Saturday. But elections are won with hard work. That must be the first thing that everybody must bear in mind. And I believe that, be it Abubakar Tinubu or Peter Obi, be it, Abubakar Atiku, Bola Tinubu or Peter Obi and the others, everybody I have seen is working very, very hard. But you see, if you want to win elections itself is a process. And by Saturday, 25th, the voters and the INEC of Nigeria will reach the peak of Nigeria's elections. And what we normally refer to as the D-Day. The D-Day activities can make or unmake a candidate. So people must be prepared from the D-Day backwards, D-1, D-2, D-3, up to D-10. So now we have D-3, 3 days to the election. What are the parties doing? What are the candidates doing by way of turnout? Are you going to get your base to turn out in their numbers to go and vote for you? Because if they don't go, you can't get the numbers after the poll to count. And after they have voted, how do you protect and ensure that these numbers are truly what was voted for you? And that's where your agent.
It appears we are having some technical.
You are what? Hello?
Peter, please go ahead. We can hear you.
That's where you need a well-trained party agents. I have listened to Kenyans, some people in Kenya who dispute that agents are not necessary. I beg to differ. Because if you are a political party worth your salt, you must always complement what the Electoral Commission is doing by also safeguarding the process. And you can only do that with your own agents, which are allowed by the law. But you can't just put anybody out there as an agent. They need training. In fact, in our case, my party, where I was the campaign manager, we even did rehearsal. We did a test run to ensure that the agents are up to the task. Because we don't want a situation where the Electoral Commission will pull a fast one on us. So we did all the nitty-gritty and even did a test run to ensure that they are up to the task. So the agents and their training, currently what is going on in Nigeria, there's been rumors that some people are not able to get all their agents. And those who have gotten their agents, I have doubts if they have been well trained to meet the task. The last time I was an observer in Nigeria, I went to various polling stations. I meet agents, I talk to them, and they don't seem to understand why they are standing there. And the same thing happened to me when I was in Kenya at the last election. I went to some polling stations and collation centers, and agents were just standing aloof. But if you have proper agents, then you move on to the next thing, which is para vote tabulation. A party, a candidate must be able to tabulate its own figures ahead. And the question is ahead of the Electoral Commission. So you need speed, accuracy, timeliness to be able to get your own para vote tabulation, so that by the time your agents in the collation room are looking at the Electoral Commission results, you have been able to provide them ahead with results from your own system, your own parallel system. So political parties should not exist like anything. They must exist to help the system come out, churn out with verifiable results, because results have created problems for Africa, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Kenya, and in others. So having gotten your people to vote, the turnout, you must also ensure that the voting and counting and collation are also well done under the eyes of your well-trained agents. So that's one thing. But the voters, even before they go online to queue to vote, would have gone through what is worrying them, that they want to vote for Mr. A or Mrs. B. And this is where policy documents and manifestos come in. Manifestos of political parties are clearly being watched by current day voters in Nigeria. I think that Angela summed it very well by coming out with what is worrying Nigerians now: insecurity, jobs, economy, and good governance or corruption. So how are the parties situating their manifesto and policy documents along the challenge to meet or satisfy Nigerians along these lines? And these are what's also going to affect the turnout and who to vote for. It's going to be a highly competitive elections. Everybody's saying so, and I am also saying so. But at the end of it all, the youth are very particular about key issues of insecurity and jobs and economy. So what are the parties and the candidates saying on these lines? It is very critical. And having said that, at the national level, there's also the need to drill down to the polling station unit. After all, there's a saying that you win or lose an election at the polling unit. What are the structures at the polling unit that will do the house to house? In my campaign, as leader of my campaign in Ghana, I introduced what I call the retail campaign, where every house, every individual on the register should and must be touched with our policy document. So if you go to the stadium and the mass of the people are there, you are doing a mass campaign. But the retail campaign has more direct consequences with the voter than the mass rallies. So there must be a combination of both. But at the end of it all, if you have proper polling station agents, they will do the house to house and identify the people within that small community and tell them about your policy, the candidate's policy towards solving insecurity, jobs, economy, and corruption in Nigeria. I don't know which party is doing that now, but when I got to airport in Nigeria, the taxi driver who first approached me gave me a small voter card with Peter Obi on it, Tom printed. So he was in effect doing a retail campaign, and I allowed him for that. But when I asked him why he's not a polling agent, he said he wrote his name and he was not considered. So it means they are taking the issue of polling agents a little bit on the low side, which is also something that needs to be looked at. So all in all, I think that it can be anybody's game within the top three. The turnout I expect to be heavy because people have been sensitized. And I don't believe when people say that the election has a disruptive candidate. No, I think rather multi-party democracy is growing in Nigeria and people are beginning to understand choices. And democracy is all about choices and ability for the society to be given an opportunity to make an informed choices. So nobody is going to disrupt this, being a disruptive candidate, but democracy is growing in Nigeria, West Africa, and Africa in general. And that is good and healthy for us. We don't want any more coup d'etats. We don't want any more one-man dictatorship. We want competition and ability to speak up our minds with new ideas and innovation that will help grow our society, particularly Nigeria and the rest of West Africa. Nigeria must carry us like Japan did to the other nations in Asia.
Okay.
Let me touch a bit about the role of Interparty Advisory Committee, IPAC. IPAC is a body of political parties coming together to share and discuss and cross-fertilize ideas. Nigeria has an IPAC, but it has been a little bit not too strong. I think in Ghana, Kenya, and others, the political parties come together to exchange ideas so that when they come up with consensus on burning issues, the whole nation will take political parties as one arm of government or government in waiting that should be taken seriously. Nigeria's IPAC has been weak for some time. And I think it's about time that they grow. And the Electoral Commission must assist them, INEC must assist them to grow and train them to understand the nitty-gritty of party organization and party management. Because the way Nigeria and Kenyans cross carpets from one party to the other, it looks to me they don't have ideology and they just cross carpet for their own sake. But you must join political parties for values and ideologies that you believe in. So it's not a matter of only going to power that you should go and join people in power, but you must respect your values and ideology that brought you. Center-right parties have their values. Socialists have their values. Which one do you want to join? But the way people crisscross and defect from parties in Kenya and Nigeria is not the best. And I think IPAC must have a role to play in that respect. I thank you.
Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. McMahon. This is very, very insightful, at least learning from your own perspective as a astute politician. Okay, so quickly we will come back to Nigeria. We want to stop by at the desk of one man who is popularly known as NEB. Okay, he's a proven journalist, an editor, a writer, a media manager, and a columnist. Mr. Enela Bello is the managing director of this day newspaper. He's going to talk to us about the importance of communication and media in presidential campaign. Has there been a media favorite in campaign? If so, who? Okay, Mr. Enela, the floor is open for us.
Thank you, Paul, for the invitation, and Angela for inviting me. Before I go to the issues I'm supposed to address, let me quickly make some comments on Ruben's comments on Angela's opening statement. Ruben's mentioned the issue of violence. Has to be remembered violence because of the activities of or narrative of Simon Ekpa and people like him. I know the background. Sorry, will you mute your listening, please?
Ms. McMahon.
So I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to agree with Ruben because he's not supported by our historical electoral history. Now, in every election, there are always pre-election violence, kind of pockets of violence on cases. But that has never been enough to mar the voting on election day. Why? Because on that day, the kind of security that is security agents that are outside, from the police or the military to every other arms of security, is always so intimidating that for of violence are not likely to come out. The only thing that happens, there could be violence on areas, but that has not been enough to disrupt the general election, or to mar, or to reduce the import of the voting on that day. What might happen, or what usually happens, and this may also happen in this one, is managing expectations after the election, when the results are announced, and that is very critical in this election because of the youths who are very hopeful that, in fact, some believe religiously that their candidate Peter Obi will win. Now, in the case, or if it happens, the man or the election is not fulfilled, the man doesn't win, the likelihood is that they will conclude that the election was rigged and we could lead to violence. So it's managing that expectation that is critical and not necessarily voting on that day. So I don't want to subscribe to the issue that violence might be a problem on Saturday. The second one is on the Muslim tickets. Again, those who made an issue were Christians in the party of the ruling party who lost out, who thought perhaps they would be the one, they would be the running, they would be nominated as the VP to the candidates. And when it don't happen, they started shouting about Muslim ticket. And then also the pastors, particularly in Pentecostal churches, also made a foolish out of it. That was at the initial stage. I think since then, people have since moved on beyond that. Nigerians know that, when politicians steal money, when they share resources, they don't talk about Muslim or Christian, that they are all the same. When we've had a history of very poor governance, and it goes across both Muslim politicians and Christian politicians. So the issue of Muslim speaker, I don't think should really be relevant or would be of much relevance in the election proper. Having said that, let me quickly go to my own what I'm supposed to address. 3 questions. The first is the importance of communication and media in the presidential campaign. I would like to say that in the last 3 months, since the primaries, or even before the primary, the candidates of the parties, and there are about 18 parties in all, they have been all over the media, granting interviews, attending debates, attending a town hall, releasing advertising and advertisement all over the place, and generally full engaging the media on all platforms, in the print, on TV, on radio, on social media. They were all over the place, selling their messages, their manifestos, making all kinds of promises, and packaging or trying to sell their candidacy and their parties. Now, that's so far important the media is in any campaign, particularly in the presidential campaign, because it is the media that is through the media that the communication function of information, of persuasion, of engagement, of building relationship, of sharing experiences. It is the media these things are pushed out. It's through the media that these things are pushed out. So essentially, the candidates have used the media effectively as a platform to educate the voting population on their manifestos, to engage supporters, to persuade the neutrals, to sell themselves, and to promote their policies and connect with the people. And this they do effectively through the social media, that is connecting with the people. Almost all of them, if not all of them, have social media accounts where they put out all kind of stuff, who they were meeting, what they were doing, and the key points in their messages or in their manifestos. And they have groups of followers, supporters, neutrals, and people who are not even for them, or people who are for other candidates, who want to follow whatever candidate is doing, either for positive or negative. So the media has been very key in this election in the last 3 months. And then, because our society is not exactly fully educated, they are very limited in terms of the education of the populace. Those who have that education to be active on the media, they are not as massive as the population of the country. So the media engagement of the candidates also has its own limitations, which I will address later. But then there are there are six or so ways in which the media influence election, which some media experts have identified. The first one is deciding who to cover. And this is done through simple name recognition. And what we have seen in this election is those who have name recognition, from the one vice president, Atiku Abubakar, to Bola Tinubu, to Peter Obi, and to Kwame Fasho, are people who have held top political appointments before. From governors, there are 3 of them who are former governors, and 1 a former minister, and there is 1 who was a former vice president. So they have name recognition. And the tendency is for the media immediately to give those people prominence and to assign coverage, give them full coverage, compared to others who didn't have that kind of name recognition because of their coming from their past appointments. And from day one, we have seen this. The second one is the media outlets attract partisan audiences, which prepare political biases in coverage. Again, we have seen this in this campaign, and candidate of the ruling party, for example, of APC, Tinubu, for example, who said presidency has been his life ambition, is a media owner. He set up the media for his presidential content for today, several years ago. So he knew where he was going. He knew he was going to contest for one day. So he set up the media, and this media is not just a newspaper; it's also TV now. So they have given him heavy coverage, and they have also been there to defend him against those who attack him. So it's not just promoting him; it's also defending him. So if you are good to that kind of media, you have partisan coverage in that kind of media. Then you have other candidates, for example, PDP, who have associates, who are also media owners, top politicians in PDP, who are also media owners, and who also use their media in support of their candidates, and that also there they promote partisan messages and coverage. Then the next thing is the relationship between the voters and the candidates. Because of social media, Twitter, Facebook, and the like, you have followers, you have supporters of candidates following them and think about feeling that kind of personal relationship with those candidates, because they follow them every day, what they do, where they go to, who they receive, the meeting they attend, and that personal relationship also has some impact at the end of the day in their perceived knowledge of the candidates they follow. And then you have what has come to be known as journalism in the area of fact-checking, which is also very heavy in this campaign. Candidates before now are fond of making some bogus claims, in their speeches, in their responses to questions. They make all kinds of claims. But since fact-checking has been introduced by media organizations, every claim is being cross-checked. And this has put the candidates on their toes, in terms of the claims they make.
Do you know anything about this?
Sonny, can you please? Sonny, please.
Here now?
Can you call him? This is
Sonny,
just.
You need to mute your mic.
Please mute your.
The basic compost.
So good. Since presidential campaign is about continuous dialogue and engagements, communication is central, and media is critical to delivering messages.
I am muted there.
Effective messages.
I can unmute myself.
Oh.
Be careful.
Sorry, you can go on.
Sonny, can you please mute on? Renela, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay. Since presidential campaign is about continuous dialogue and engagement, communication is central, and media is critical to delivering effective messages. This is reflected in the ads, in the speeches, in the rhetoric, in the drama, in the campaign so far. Through campaign messages, voters learn about candidates and their priorities, and the concerns and needs of the people which candidates speak to. Political rhetoric connects voters to candidates. Let's leave to the second issue. Has there been a media favorite in this campaign? And if so, who? A media favorite, yes and no. Yes, on social media. It's social media because social media is populated by the youth. And these are the youth who essentially are behind or the key in the obedient movement. They are particularly the people who form the obedient movement. And they follow their candidates, the OB, with religious fervor. Whatever he says, they believe, and whoever opposes him, they threaten, and they threaten with all kinds of things on social media. So in terms of social media follower, social media favorite, there is no question in Twitter will be. But in the other media generally, there is no favorite. And the reason is one, media ownership, which I put to earlier, there are different media ownership. politicians, a candidate, for example, I say it's a media owner. There are also media that also have different interests, ethnic interests. There are media houses that are pro-North. There are some that are pro-East. The interest they project are interests of the East, or those who project the interest of the North. And there are also some that project the interest of the West. So we have this kind of dynamics. So which makes it difficult to have a favorite. So among the candidates, there are no media favorite at all, except for social media, which is Obi. Then the last issue, which of the three candidates has had most endearing communication strategy and why? Endearing, I wouldn't say anyone has had an endearing message. One, among all the three candidates, or even the four of them, none of them has that kind of aura, the kind of charm, that's like the Mandela charm, for example, or even let's even give the Nigeria experience, the kind of charm or the kind of aura that an Awolowo or Amadu Bello had. None of them is an orator, the kind of orator we knew of Nnamdi Azikiwe. So in terms of endearing communication, we do not have that kind of personality among the candidates. That's one. Two, they all essentially come from the same cloth. Their parties are not ideological. And that's why politicians in Nigeria move from one party to another. Because parties are not ideological, the candidates essentially say the same thing. In terms of what they want to do, in terms of programs, in terms of manifesto, it's all the same thing. They all talk about security, they all talk about the economy, free economy. Even
so you're using microphone.
why is it
Yes, I think it was off. Is he here?
Sonny, can you please mute yourself, Sonny, please? Because you're interrupting. Just put it up, put your video and your microphone off, please. Sonny.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're interrupting somebody who's talking.
Yeah.
So you have to mute your microphone. Mute your microphone. The microphone you have to mute.
Unfortunately.
May I go, please?
Mr. Nela, please go ahead.
Okay, so my thoughts have been interrupted. So as I was saying, they all say the same thing. They are cut from the same cloth. They preach the same message. Free enterprise, essentially, free enterprise economy. That's all they all represent. Even Peter Obi, who is running on the platform of a party that one who says ideological, a Labour Party, which believes in big governments, what he preaches is free enterprise. So meanwhile, he represents the party that's a socialist party, but he preaches free enterprise. So so all of them essentially say the same thing. So there is no much difference in their messages. So one cannot say anything endearing in that kind of situation. And then the third one, negativity in the campaign. Negativity in this campaign has been very, very heavy. A lot of abuses, name calling, and particularly from their communication and media aides who are in dozens. All they do is to trade abuses in the media every day without necessarily addressing and so the key issues of what the candidates will do if elected are buried because of all this, because those abuses are easily they make the headline easily, So those are the reasons where I cannot come out to say that anyone has an endearing message. But then in our environment, just my complete conclusion is that the media has its own limitations, despite its importance. The point is that what influences election more than anything goes beyond the media. One, because of the fact that the educated amongst the voters, they are a minority elite. And so whatever the media does, we just use that just for elite entertainment, you know. But in terms of people that really vote, they do not care about what the media writes or what you say on TV or what you say out there. They do not, it doesn't bother them. What influences the election are much more in terms of religion, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of the personalities in their different domains. You know. So let me leave it here for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. NEB, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the interruptions. Please, I would like to ask some of us, if you are not speaking, please put your video off and mute your microphone so to avoid interruption. Please check that your microphone is muted. You can only mute it or put it on or mute it when you are to speak so that we avoid interruption, because somebody can lose his train of thought. So thank you very much, Mr. Nela, for your presentation. Now, quickly, let us bring in Dr. Chong Robert is the WAPOR Global President. He will give us food for thought on the importance of opinion research and scientific data in elections. We're going to listen from Hong Kong. Dr. Chong?
Right, yes, hello. Let me see if I could share the screen. Can you now see the screen now? Very
yes.
good. So let me be brief. I would like to say a big thank you to all of you, because to me, this is also a learning experience. The title for today's webinar is really whether this is a defining moment for democracy. I would say that it is definitely a defining moment, not just for democracy, but also for the SSA chapter and for WAPOR and for myself as well. So let me share with you very quickly what I have been sharing in the Dubai annual conference. I think, I hope that what will happen in Nigeria, I mean the election, all the pollings and all the post-election analysis will be very, very helpful, not just to Nigeria and Africa, but also to the world when we talk about the professional development of public opinion polling. To me and also colleagues in WAPOR, and now we have the SSA new chapter of WAPOR, I think when we study everything that we have been doing in the past 75 years, I have come to a conclusion that there are three very important core values. One is the liberty concept, and for all elections, especially this election, I think we'll be looking at how free are people in expressing themselves, not just through voting, through the ballot boxes, but also through opinion polling. So that is the profession which shows what people really think, even though they might vote or they might not vote, but we still care very much about their feeling. And on this particular perspective, I like to really share with you one idea, which I have heard from many speakers before me, that some of you are worried that perhaps the turnout rate would be low, perhaps much lower than 80% because of this sense of insecurity. And at the end, there will be some winners, but would that winner be representative of the electorate, of the people? I think the only answer would be the post-election opinion survey to see if people are happy with the election, whether they have voted or not. Do they feel that it was a fair election? Was it a peaceful election? So that is where us in the public opinion research come into play. Of course, we are now going through all the predictions, all the pre-election surveys. I'm not quite sure whether there will be exit poll in Nigeria 3 days later, but there are a lot of polling activities, and we are doing projections on the turnout rates and also on the winning candidates, and also on all the national and local agenda. But all these assumes that we are turning out quality work. Posters are doing our work scientifically, professionally, unbiased, apolitical. So that is a very important part of what WAPOR colleagues should be doing, that we should upgrade our quality of work that we have been doing. And for all these is because of for humanity, that we love to apply scientific knowledge and also our professionalism to further the good of the people. And of course, today we're talking about Nigerian people, but that also applies to everyone around the world. And we, as a profession, is serving the world. Now in Dubai, I share a little bit about how WAPOR had developed over the past 75 years. And I look forward to how WAPOR would be developing. And I did mention very strongly that we should be having more regional chapters and activities. And today we are seeing the first activity of SSA, and this is a wonderful webinar. But I think this should go on, not just before elections, but after elections, and not just for Nigeria, but all the places in Africa. So that should be one future development of WAPOR, and I am sure the Nigerian election and SSA's work this time will be very helpful to WAPOR, both regionally and globally. So please keep up the effort. Now on the horizontal axis, I also in Dubai analyzed what WAPOR has been doing in all our research over the past 75 years. And all I have this horizontal axis, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. But I think one very important element that we should be developing is real local, regional studies, elections, everything. So what we are now discussing today will be a very important element of WAPOR global and regional discussion to come. So you see with this triangular global value guiding us on all these horizontal and vertical development, I just feel that we as a profession and WAPOR as a big family should see us as a big world, as a global family. And with that, I just want to share with you some statistics that in 3 years ago, WAPOR had one representative from each nation, so-called we call them national representatives. We see this picture 2020. And in 21, we are seeing a growth of some representation. And last year, we have a big growth. But you can see a lot of white areas in Africa, especially these countries that we are talking today, Sub-Saharan and African countries. So I think WAPOR is underrepresented. But I think with the establishment of SSA, and now with this webinar and the Nigerian election being the kickoff kind of study, I hope we'll be seeing a lot more representation from Africa. And this is what I would love to see, that we are getting global, more global, and Africa will be more and more represented. And if you really look at this little picture, it is actually the logo of WAPOR now. So Africa is very important. So this ends my PowerPoint presentation, but I would like to, perhaps I could stop my sharing screen and just, let me try to stop the share screen now. Have I stopped? But never mind.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, great. Yeah, you are good.
Okay,
You are good.
It's good.
Are you back?
I just like to end my short presentation with a few notes. That I think earlier on, Pamela Satoni actually advised or shared with us 8 very important experience from Kenya. But she didn't mention about WAPOR SSA. I think that is one very important element that we really should build on. It's very important that we have professional operations in turning out professional surveys, in having the freedom to publish polls, even on election day. So that would be very one important element for us to go further for this election and in future. Because for us working in WAPOR, and I hope all of you will join, is already a member of WAPOR, but I think we'll be really looking at how free we are in running our quality studies. So how free are we in publishing our surveys? And once the election is going on, and after the election, how people actually feel about the election. Was it fair or not? I would say do not expect too high turnout rates, although the poll said it could be as much as 80% people wanting to vote. But experience around the world, including my place in Hong Kong, says that there will be a lot of depreciation for a lot of reasons. People just sometimes are too busy to go, or perhaps they are too frightened to go. But in the end, if we have something like 40, 50% turnout, we still have a turnout. And it's important to ask people who turn out to vote and also who didn't turn out to vote, how they feel about the election. That would be those indicators, which I would think is as important as independent monitors of the elections, because that is those indicators that people could actually tell the world that is this election speaking for the people. So those will be areas that I hope all of you will consider during the election and after election to further our discussion and sharing experience of the Nigerian election to everybody around the world, including WAPOR. So I'm still here to learn from all of you, and thank you very much for inviting me to give a few points of sharing. Thank you very much, Paul, and all the Angela and all the colleagues.
Great. Thank you, Robert. We appreciate your presence. Because we are running short of time, I'm going to invite Barrister Sonny Ekwowusi, who is the principal partner for Sonny Ekwowusi and Co. He's also the chairman of the Human and Constitutional Rights Committee of African Bar Association. So he's going to tell us about the youth question. A large percentage of people for this election are made up of those who are 18 to 34. Will the youth be the deciding vote? And what will they be looking for? Barrister Sonny, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Barrister Sonny.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Paul, for inviting me to two things. I mean, the experts have spoken, and I have all has been said, and I just want to mention a few dots that have been missing. I just straight away by saying that the youths are the Elysia of these elections, and in the sense that they have strongly resolved to participate in these elections, especially the presidential election. Unlike in the past, in which the youth used to play very nonchalant attitude, a kind of a don't care attitude. But this time around, Nigerian youth, who constitute a large population of this country, of Nigeria, are poised to effect a change because they feel that in the last 8 years, they have been shortchanged, they have been marginalized, and so they are out to make a difference. When I talk about making a difference, I mean that they are all armed with their PVCs and ready to cast their vote, especially on Saturday. I do not think that many of them do not have their PVCs. They have their PVCs. It's only in a few areas where they don't have their PVCs. And many of them in the past months have tried to get their PVCs in readiness for the elections, especially the Saturday election. They are willing to bear their fangs on anybody who is trying to disrupt the election. Dr. Ruben Abati mentioned the disruptive group in the Southeast led by Simon Ekpa, who resides in the Finlands. Let me say quickly that the violence in the Southeast is somehow exaggerated. I come from the Southeast, so I will tell you that the Southeast is quite safe. You could travel to the Southeast. People come out to do whatever they want to do. It's only occasionally that you have this pocket violence. It doesn't happen every day. And I will tell you that people are ready to come out and vote, especially the young people, on election day. They are ready to confront anybody showing a gun or whatever, you know. You know that the young people are not afraid of anything. The young people are moved with ideals, but they are also great risk takers in the sense that they are ready to take any risk to make sure that what they have in mind is done. So I do not think that the threat of violence with the Nigerian to participate, not only participating in the election, but also to ensure that their votes count. I have a friend, a very young friend, who has been shuttling Lagos to Kano. I mean, he has been liaising with young people in Kano to make sure that they all come out to vote on the election days. So it is not the usual thing, you know, of the youth staying behind and just listening. No, they want to fully participate. Just not forget that, because Ruben about to mention the NSAS protest. The election is more or less like the young people see it as like an extension of the NSAS protest. Because you know that the report of the NSAS came out. Of course, right now it has not been, one can say, implemented. In fact, they see wishy-washy. And many young people are not happy about the result of the outcome of the NSAS protest and all that. So they want to show it on election day. You know, they are poised to vote for a candidate of their choice. And you can see that they are all lining behind the person of Peter Obi, who is who has impressed them, really impressed them. They are not being hypocritical about it. They have listened to him, and they feel that he will protect their interests, and that is why they are all lined up behind him. And that is why, for the first time in the political history of Nigeria, we are going to see a large turnout of young people. Large turnout of young people are going to turn out to cast their vote on the election days, especially the presidential election day. I would also like to mention the resolve of the President Muhammad Buhari, who has said so many times that he is bequeathing a legacy before he leaves office. And that legacy is to oversee a free and fair election. I said this so many times, and he has demonstrated that he means it by getting the central bank to redesign the Naira currency. And that's why we're having the cash crunch in Nigeria, because of the redesign of the Naira. But the president wants to ensure that no political candidate, will take advantage of the money he has been stockpiling in house over the years to rig the election in his favor. And you can see that has affected some political candidates who are now crying, especially the president and the central bank, that they have not done well by resigning the Naira. So the president means it. He has said it, and I think he said it a few days ago, that he's not in support of any candidate. Nigerians should troop out to vote for a candidate of their choice. This, to me, is giving a lot of moral boost to many people, especially the youth, who hitherto are not participating in the election, because they're confident that the president has given them a leeway to come out and exercise their votes. That is very important. And I have my fears about the election. I mean, that democracy is not, in my view, it's not yet the best system of government. In the United States, where democracy has said to have worked, many political scientists and commentators have said that democracy has not worked up to 50% in America. I mean, election is still rigged in America, and they're all complaining. But let's not think that America is a model. In the case of Nigeria, election especially the presidential election in Nigeria, has been far from being free and fair. Presidential election has been far from free and fair. Maybe except the June 12, 1993 election, which was said to be a little bit free and fair. Other presidential elections has not been free and fair, especially the 79 election which produced the person of Alhaji Shehu Shagari, the ones that produced Buhari not be free and fair, in my view. And that's my greatest fear because, you know, we are told about beavers and all that, the technology and all that. But no technology is proof fraud so long as it is operated by a fraudulent mind. Technology will become fraudulent when it is operated by a fraudulent mind. So all the talk about beavers and so, well, I don't really have much confidence. I pray that those who are operating the beavers and so, they are people of integrity, they are people that have ethics and so. So I do not think that technology just, you know, in itself will make a difference. But I'm hopeful that they will operate the technology properly in the case of in the election. Let me say something about the candidates. So far, P2B is has come out first. All the polls have been in his favor. The economics has kept P2B as the best of all the candidates. The economists, you know, the other economists is always a very conservative and also very, very radical, and they do their homework well. They are taking on P2B and all that. But that said, I do not think that presidential election, 2023 presidential election that will take place on Saturday will be completely fair and fair in the sense that the stakes are very high. Are very high in the sense that if you know how who believe that presidency is their birthright, you know, they always get it. It's their birthright. They call them the owners of Nigeria. I think they have not gone to sleep, and they will not want the Fulani structure, which has been set up in the last 8 years by President Buhari, to be destroyed by a P2B. And that's why I think that the election might not be free or fair, or even if it's free and fair, the owners of Nigeria might decide in favor of Atiku Abubakar. But Atiku is completely out because the Northerners do not want him. They don't want him at all because of security information that they have about him. But for the fact that he is sick, he lacks the capacity to become president of Nigeria. And except for the Southwest, where he will gather some votes, he's going to lose heavily out the Southeast. He's going to lose heavily in the North because most Northerners have left him. They're no more with him. The North has successfully used him in the sense that they are using to achieve their aim, and they have not
2 minutes to wrap up.
Oh, 2 minutes to round up. Okay. Let me wrap up by saying that, look, that they have dumped him and he's not going to have it easy. And that makes me talk about the post-election crisis, managing the post-election crisis, especially in a place like Lagos. If the person like Asiwaju Tinubu loses, Lagos will be taken over by violence, at least in the next, for 3 days, we'll be taken over by violence. How is that violence going to be managed? I'm told that the soldiers are here, they are ready to curb the violence, but the soldiers are not going to man every nook and cranny of Lagos. No? The area boys and the towns who are going to do the riots and all that, they are in different places. So I think that the soldiers are not going to really, hold anybody. So we should be ready for that, how to manage the crisis. And if somebody like P2B wins, he loses, we're also going to see a crisis in the Southeast in the sense that the Southeast, we have the IPOP. IPOP will have more followership because they will not be saying that, fine, they don't want to give us a president. They don't want an Igbo man to become president. P2B who is very much qualified, has not been allowed to win. So we're going to see some violence over there. And it's going to affect the way Nigeria is. And it's going to lead to the so-called destruction of Nigeria, because people are not going to say that, look, let us restructure Nigeria because we have seen that some people cannot become president in Nigeria. Let me leave it here. Thank you very, very much.
Very good. Thank you very much, Brother Sani, for your presentation. Quickly, we have the last person, Dr. Franklin Ngu, who is also the director of Public Sector Initiative at LBS, Pan Atlantic University. He's going to discuss issue of good governance. Does it matter in an election? Do people care about corruption, and how will their perception play out in this election? Will the cleanest man win? So I invite you, Dr. Franklin Ngo. The mic is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for the invitation. And good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by saying that, interestingly, when I think the initial presentation, and they were showing the reasons or the factors that determine that people consider important for this election. And we saw insecurity, jobs, economy, good governance, infrastructure, education, health, unemployment, and electricity, and other factors. So if we put that one side, we now ask, when we say good governance, what does it even mean? So even if we use the indicators used in measuring good governance, we can use the World Bank governance indicators, and include voice and accountability, political stability, absence of violence and terrorism, control of corruption, rule of law, government effectiveness, and regulatory quality. In all these variables, Nigeria has consistently performed badly, particularly in the last 20 years that since measurement started. And if you now relate it back with regards to the way the youth are demanding or including in this election, they are doing that because they believe that because Nigeria is not doing well in these areas, that's the reason why we have insecurity. That's the reason why we have unemployment. That's the reason why we have high inflation. That's the reason why the infrastructure is not there. That's the reason why so many of the negative things that we see in Nigeria are happening. So even if let me just use 3 key ones to explain what I mean. So let's look at rule of law, regulatory quality, and government effectiveness. So for you to do well in these variables, if you do well, the highest you can get will be positive or plus 2.5. The least you can get is negative 2.5. For rule of law, Nigeria has consistently, averagely about negative 1.3 or 1.2. That's for rule of law. And rule of law reflects perceptions of the extent to which agents have confidence in and abide by the rules of society, and in particular, the quality of contract enforcement, property rights, the police, and the courts, as well as the likelihood of crime and violence. If we leave rule of law and go to government effectiveness, in these last years, Nigeria has also consistently performed badly with a result of -1, and it reflects perception of the quality of public services, the quality of civil service, and the degree of its independence from political pressures, the quality of policy formulation and implementation, and credibility of government commitment to such policies. The last one, which is regulatory quality, it says it reflects perception of the ability of government to formulate and implement sound policies and regulations that permit and promote private sector development. Nigeria has also consistently performed badly, and they've been having about negative 0.8. So if we use this trait just for now, the question then is, with these poor performances, who do we think that Nigerians blame for these poor performances? Of course, Nigerians are blaming PDP and APC. And that's why many people believe that the two parties are the same. That's why Nigerians are saying that Bola Tinubu's administration, which has also been confirmed, will be a continuation of the present government. They're also saying that if PDP wins, it will be business as usual. Because given the fact that Atiku Abubakar was in government before, and all the people running with him are PDP members, some of them were APC members. So it's more or less two sides of the same coin. And if these two parties are responsible for this, for the failures in factors of good governance, which now results in high poverty level, where we now have over 130 million people, 130 million Nigerians classified as multidimensionally poor, where we now have very high unemployment, with youth one getting to close to 40%, with underemployment, inflation, insecurity, and all that. That's the reason why Nigerians are, particularly the youths, are concerned and showing very serious interest in this election. And that's the reason for all the polls that we saw, from Bloomberg to Next Year to Anna poll to Economist magazine. So if we use based on data, it's clear that the youths are interested, or Nigerians are interested in good governance. Because those are the reasons why they've consistently voted or preferred P2B above other candidates, in spite of the fact that they come from a smaller party, in spite of the fact that the party is quite new, in spite of the fact that it's not as established as Atiku Abubakar or Bola Tinubu. So it's quite strange and surprising that even with all this evidence and data, that Dr. Abati will say that the election will be between APC and PDP. It lacks objectivity. It doesn't follow data. Because what we are seeing here is that if good governance, which we've confirmed as important, and the youth are clamoring for good governance, and the data based on the polls, the data used for polls all relate to good governance, and all the polls, not one missing, have confirmed that these good governance issues are important, and P2B is rated #1. It's quite surprising, as I said, and a bit sad that we will ignore it and say that it's for PDP and APC. We also need to appreciate that this election is about Nigeria. This good governance is about good governance of Nigeria. When we have good governance, it means that we can create jobs. It means that we can reduce insecurity. It means that inflation, we have better fiscal and monetary policies that will now lead to better economic outcomes and all that. Remember also, let's also remember that when we have good governance, let me even just bring it so that we can understand more. With good governance, you find out that financial sector development will take place. We will have improved access to credit. Private sector will grow. There will be job creation. There will be stability across board. And of course, that will lead to what we call sustainable economic growth. So back to the question, is good governance important? It is very, very important for this election. All Nigerians, irrespective of their tribe, religion, and class, somehow, even if they don't understand it as good governance, they understand it from the experiences that are passing on a daily basis. As they said, there is no part of Nigeria where you buy things cheaper, even though you might buy it slightly cheaper in our villages. But the challenges that we are facing cut across from Maiduguri to Lagos, and from Lagos to Damaturu, and from Damaturu to Sokoto, and Sokoto to Bayelsa. So it's cut, and that's the reason why you've seen also that there has been sudden upsurge in terms of number of people that have registered in the election. Because many people are saying that they're tired of this continuous rigmarole, even retarded, that the country is retarding in terms of these key governance indicators. So it is very, very important. And Nigerians are determined that this election is about Nigeria. It's not about where somebody comes from. It's not about that it is my turn or not your turn. It's not about that I must be president before I leave, before I die, or before my time is up. It's about Nigeria. It's about how do we get it right and how do we move Nigeria to a better place. And that relates to the issue of corruption. So if we talk about corruption, it's also relating to good governance. It's one of the key variables in measuring good governance. So if we use corruption to look at these three candidates, it's also one of the reasons why Nigerians seems to be jumping or associating themselves more with P2B than the other candidates. Because if we use even their public sector experiences, many people believe, for instance, that if you compare all of them in terms of prudence, in terms of performance, in terms of outcomes, in terms of the way they've lived their lives, in terms of perks of office, that P2B seems to be above the other candidates. So it's also on record, for instance, that using key development goals, I'm talking about either Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals, that he is rated above these other candidates when he was governor, when the was governor, or maybe even when he was a VP, was vice president. So corruption is very, very important for this election. And of course, you know, President Mohamed Buhari, when he took over power, he said that it's either we kill corruption, even when he was campaigning, it's either we kill corruption or corruption will kill us. Because with corruption, it means that projects will not be executed, projects will be overinflated. What we are supposed to use money to do, we might not be able to do it. And that's the reason, in spite of immense blessings and potential we have in Nigeria, we've not developed, because the level of corruption in Nigeria is very, very high. If you look at Transparency International, all their reports, they've been showing that we are doing very, very bad. That takes us to the issue of Human Development Index, where Nigeria ranks among the lowest across the world. And that is the reason why, as I said earlier on, that we are now the poverty capital of the world, with over 130-something million Nigerians classified as multidimensionally poor. And you know, when you are classified as multidimensionally poor, it means that you lack access to education, health, and standard of living, which now constitute what we call Human Development Index. So if these factors are caused by corruption, it means that corruption is important for this election. It's also the reason why we are now seeing people demanding and asking that this election must be credible. Because it's also corruption that makes an election not to be credible. It's also corruption that makes an election to be rigged. It's also corruption that makes people will or desire to be truncated, because certain people or certain groups will not want the election to be credible. So that's why it is important that, as corruption is very, very central to this election, the demand on INEC, that is Independent National Electoral Commission, to conduct free and fair election, it cannot be overemphasized. If they do free and fair election, based on what we've seen, based on what the polls are showing, it indicates, if as polls have also helped in determining other elections, not only in Nigeria, but in other parts of the world. If the elections go by what the outcomes of the polls say, it suggests that P2B might likely be the winner, which also relates to the question, will the cleanest man win? Because the poll is suggesting that Nigerians believe that among all the candidates, he seems to be the most favored in terms of good governance, in terms of corruption, in terms of other factors that will bring about better development in Nigeria. So it is important that if we're talking about corruption, that the emphasis should now move to INEC, should now move to security agencies to also understand that this election must be free and fair. And if it is not free and fair, there might be challenges and there might be problems. Because as we all know, Nigerians are tired, and some people are even suggesting, as we saw here, that the NSAS was a reflection of this level of frustration with the situation we have in Nigeria. So if the elections are conducted without corruption, if the elections are conducted free and fair, any outcome that we get will be accepted by Nigerians. But if the elections are conducted based on corrupt tendencies, based on using violence to suppress certain areas, based on using other techniques to suppress certain areas, based on manipulation, based on other tendencies that will be clear that it's not free and fair, there will be crisis. And that is why it's important that we all emphasize that the election should be conducted without corruption. The election should be conducted based on the rules, guidelines already agreed, and that even the security agents and INEC must understand, and I keep emphasizing, is about Nigeria. Because at the end of the day, after the elections, Nigeria will continue to exist, but its existence will depend on the way the elections are conducted. And that is why I keep emphasizing that these elections should be free and fair. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Franklin. Very insightful. Just to add, the other day I was reading that Nigeria is ranked 114 out of 140 in the Rule of Law Index 2022. So we are just way down the box. Thank you very much. And I want to thank each and every one of you. We're going to the plenary now. So you're going to ask questions to the panelists based on their presentations. If you have, by indication, your digital hand, and then we'll give you the microphone to ask all the area that we have discussed. If you have any questions, the microphone is very free to the audience. I'm going to allow only for 10 minutes. Ask question, key question, condense your question, one question each for those who want to ask questions. The panelists can also ask among themselves. So just 10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. Do we have any hands? Do we have any hands up? You can, okay, Christopher is here. Christopher?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Yes.
What's your question? First of all, tell us which country you are joining from, and then what is your question?
Okay, good afternoon. I'm joining from Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, precisely. Yes, thank you very much, the panelists and the host. It has been an insightful discussion. I want to ask a question. Now, I think the last two sections we just finished, the panelists discussed the role of the youth. In one of them mentioned answers that, oh, if we didn't go the way of the youth. Now, the question I want to ask is, we want to assume that, okay, let me project the youth per se, in quotes, they want a certain candidate, which is Peter Obi. Now, what if after the election, it didn't go their way, that is, the preferred candidate, Peter Obi, did not emerge as the president of Nigeria come 2023. So I want to ask, what should the youth do? Or what should be the experience? Or I think what should be the role of the youth in case their preferred candidate, Peter Obi, did not emerge as president come 2020, this Saturday?
Okay, great. The question is very clear. What will the youth do if their preferred candidate didn't win after the presidential election? I think the person that talked, first of all, I'm going to give a chance to Sonny, and then of course any other person, any of the panelists can attribute something to that response to that. Sonny, are you there? Sonny, are you there? Okay, fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay.
You're on mute. Sonny, you're on mute. Okay. If you're not ready now, I'll just throw it open.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, just for a moment. Okay, Sonny, speak. You have few seconds. You have only 10 seconds.
Okay, I mean, just to say that I strongly believe in the talent of the Nigerian youths, and I'm optimistic that they will turn out en masse and vote for candidates of their choice, especially the presidential election on Saturday.
Okay, you're not answering the question. He said if the preferred candidate for the youth didn't win, what do you think that the youth will do?
Oh, firstly, I mean that the youths are going to, I mean, I do not foresee any violence on their part. I think that they will further line up behind a P2B to stand for future elections in Nigeria. I do not think they are going to, yes, it's going to solidify. Don't forget that P2B's intervention is a movement. It's not a political party. So it's going to last beyond this election. It's going to be for future elections in Nigeria. So I guess that if P2P loses, they will line up behind him and fortify their resolve. They're not going to leave him, certainly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. NB, you wanted to say something before?
Yes, I'd like to say that the youth should note that in any contest, either you lose or you win. So your candidate either loses or wins or loses. So they should have that expectation that Peter Obi may win, he may also lose. Should he lose, they should not lose hope, because the point is that it is difficult for any candidate to win an election in Nigeria over a period of how many months? Peter Obi became a candidate of Labour only some 3 or 4 months ago, to contest against parties, APC and PDP, and politicians who have built structures of all kinds of structures, some we call it corruption or whatever you want to call it, over several years across the country, not just in the cities where the youth are much more active, but across the country, every community, every village, all over the country. The youth are much more active in the city centers. Would that be enough to upstage the existing system? I doubt it. So what they need to do is to prepare, limit their expectations, and then prepare for more work. Yeah, to Obi lose this time, then another 4 years is coming. It's only 4 years. So it's to use that period to build, to engage, to expand, to continue to grow their movements until they get the change they want.
Okay.
Can I say something briefly, please?
Go ahead, Dr. Franklin.
Okay, it's something I think is important that we clarify something. While P2B is the candidate of the youths, we should understand the reason why they prefer him, which we know already, that they prefer him because they believe that he will bring good governance, reduce corruption, and do things better for the benefit of the youths. So if, for instance, that the election is conducted free and fair, and the procedure or the processes for the emergence of the winner, it's transparent and clear enough, of course, the youths will accept the election, the outcome. But if the election is not conducted, is not free and fair, and is not transparent, and it's evident that the election has been manipulated, the election has been rigged, of course the youth will not accept it. So what is important is for the election to be conducted under free and fair and allow the youth to properly exercise their rights. Thank you.
Very great. Thank you very much.
A quick comment on what you said. You see, the point is that the youth did not follow Obi because it's Obi. They adopted Obi in spite of him. If Obi, for example, had been a candidate of the PDP where he was before, the way supported by the youth now wouldn't have happened. The youth wanted something different. That two parties have been a problem to the country over the years. They wanted a fresh party, something new. And then Obi left PDP to go to APC. So supporting him wasn't because it's Obi, it's part of him. The youth just wanted something different, simple. If he had been PDP and supported PDP and been the candidate of PDP, there was no way the kind of support he had now, he would have had it. No way.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. That's what I'm saying, actually.
So it's not about Obi as a person. It's not about Obi as a person.
As an individual. Yeah.
Okay, so that I can give other people opportunity to. We have any other question? I saw Dr. Bati's hand.
Hello?
Dr. Bati, you can speak on, please. Dr. Bati, go ahead. You're on mute.
To say that, look, there is a difference between expectations and reality. People should manage their expectations. More than any other election in recent memory in Nigeria, this is one election where nobody, 2 days to the election, can say categorically that this is the man that will win. What we see is that in this election, there are more questions than answers, number one. So people insisting on this and that, that's absolutely, against the run of play. Number two, I made a point earlier with regard to the youth, that the youth constitute the bulk of the voting population from the ages of 18 to about 49. But what percentage of those youths have PVCs? I talked about PVCs being found inside forest. If you don't have PVC in this election, you cannot vote. That is a fact. Now, number three, the point that has been raised ad nauseam about what will youth do and all that. Look, yesterday there was a second National Peace Accord meeting, and the point was made there that whoever wins or loses should respect the rule of law and behave after the fashion of gentlemen. What Nigerians expect, what the international community expects, is that people will behave themselves. Number four, so much capital has been made in the course of this discussion about polls. This is what the polls are saying. This is what the polls are saying. Look, the intelligent question to ask is, what is the sample size of some of those polls? What also is the margin of error? And in any case, the general, suspicion is that many of those polls are organized by the political parties to serve their own interests, or by the candidates themselves, that they are sponsored. So Nigerians don't trust polls. And number five, the authorities have said, at least for the broadcasting, arms of Nigeria, section 5.3.3L of the broadcasting code of Nigeria, that nobody, no media house, no broadcasting house, should either do any exit poll or permutations as the elections go on, that will be an infraction of the law, and that such broadcasting stations will be sanctioned. This is the reality, as different from expectations or what people think that they can wish into reality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bati. I'll bring in Angela. I saw your hand raised up before Ali. After Angela, Ali. Ali, I think you are based in Ivory Coast. Angela first, please.
Let Ali go first, since we are the hosts.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ali.
Thank you very much. My name is Ali Guesson. I take a great pleasure to be part of this webinar. I'm taking part, a colleague and I from French-speaking part of West Africa. So you may be indulgent about my English. I had a question, but the webinar was so well that at the end of the webinar, the last speaker gave the answer to that question, because there is a big competition over this election, more than 80 candidates and 4 strong candidates, a lot of mobilization, a lot of campaign, but this should result to a good turnout of participants, people to come and elect their president. But I heard from Dr. Sabati that because of the security, this won't probably happen, because the turnout will be around 35%. Now, the question was, what is the analysis of the security situation? But thanks to Dr. Ngu, I have some response. This is the state of the governance. Now, I have a follow-up question. How Dr. Ngu and Dr. Abati see the evolution of the governance in Nigeria in the medium, short, medium, and long run, because Nigeria is the biggest country in our region, like Cote d'Ivoire or Senegal. These countries, in terms of population, are 1/10 of Nigeria population. So if Nigeria goes well, then it sets a good example and a good agenda for the other countries. So how do you see governance in the next future? Thank you.
Okay. So I will leave first of all, let me bring Dr. Ngu to answer that question.
Thank you very much, Ali. First of all, that's why everybody is clamoring for the elections to be free and fair. Because of course, you know, a free and fair election signals that good governance will be enthroned, signals that the process of governance will be credible and transparent, signal that there will be people checking the government, telling them to do X, Y, Z. So it is important that we get it right. As they mentioned, rule of law, regulatory quality, government effectiveness, voice and accountability, control of corruption, Nigeria has not done well at all. So that's why people's expectations are very, very high. And also relating to what Dr. Abati said, that people don't believe in polls, and that sometimes people don't believe in polls, and that the candidates might organize these polls. One candidate or the same candidate cannot organize polls for Bloomberg, for Economist, for Steers, for Anna polls, and all the polls have been consistent. So the polls are important, and they are a factor that will indicate what Nigerians are asking for. So to your question, I believe that if we get the elections are conducted free and fair, and a government comes in, it means that that government will be in check, because they know that they came in based on the support and acceptability of majority of Nigerians. But if the elections are manipulated and the person who is not supposed to win wins, he knows that he won through manipulation, through corrupt practices, of course he will not be accountable, because he knows that he didn't come in based on factors of transparency or credibility. So that is why it is very, very important that we get it right. And once we get it right, as Nigeria is perceived as the biggest market in Africa, or somehow accepted as the giant of Africa, it means that other African countries will look up to Nigeria. It means that even other developing and emerging markets will look up to Nigeria. It means that they will say, oh, if Nigeria can get it right, while certain things are going wrong in other countries, of course, Nigeria will stand up and say, this cannot be so. But if we get a wrong person, when I say wrong person, I mean someone that is manipulated to emerge. If something is going wrong in other African countries, of course, he will not have the moral authority to question what is going on in other African countries. So it is important, it is pertinent it is, I don't know how to emphasize it, that these elections must be free and fair. That is the only time it will be accepted. And that is the only time that authority will be there to now go beyond Nigeria and go to African countries. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Dr. Bati, I saw your hand move up before. I think this question also has a connection with what you said before. You want to make a comment on that in a few seconds?
Okay, I'll try to be very brief. Thank you very much, moderator. The first point is a linkage between security situation and turnout, voter turnout, which is one of the issues we have had to discuss in this session. Now, I didn't say because of security situation, elections will not hold. I didn't say that. What I said is that voter turnout can be affected. If you have 94.3 million voters, and you can't even get up to 35%, or voting does not take place in certain parts of the country, then that could be a problem for the credibility and legitimacy of the election itself and its outcomes, which is why the point made by Mr. Robert Chong, is important. He said, look, what is important is that the election is seen to be credible and fair. After all, it's the people that come out that will determine the outcome. I cited a specific example of Simon Ekpa, the factional leader of IPOP, who in fact had a viral video in which he said he was telling people not to come out from February 24, which will fall from tomorrow, even in places that do not fall under Igbo land. He was that, overzealous with his own political ambitions. The same Simon Ekpa, if you check the news now, has been arrested. Hello? Can I finish? The same Simon Ekpa has now been arrested in Finland today as a result of what I pointed out to be the international interest in this election. So I think we should all note that the international community trying to help Nigeria to see that all goes well. And I said, this is a major responsibility for the security agencies, for the states. How do they address that challenge being posed by non-state actors, not just in the Southeast or the South-South, but elsewhere? Number two, the gentleman from Ivory Coast said Nigeria is important. Of course, that's a no-brainer. The election that Nigeria is going into this time around, if you look at the figure, it's more than election figures in more than 10 countries in West Africa. So the world cannot afford an implosion in Nigeria. So in the short term, in the long term, in the medium term, Nigeria must get it right. And that is why we hope that all the promises that have been given by all the stakeholders in this election will not amount to rhetoric. It will amount to a redetermination to move Nigeria forward. Finally, the point was made about ideology. Yes, I agree with the persons who said ideology is not an important thing in this election. It's all about personal ego across the board. And that is the truth. And the lady from Kenya raised the point about technology. The new thing about this election, what is new, is that we have the Electoral Act 2022. That Electoral Act 2022 talks about technology. BVAS is about technology. What they call IREV, which is the new reporting system, is about technology. But the law does not eliminate human interference, human involvement. And that's why I think the lady from Kenya made a big point about lesson, about how to make sure that the human interface is something that Nigeria works upon, because Nigerians are very good at beating the system. Thank you. Hello, Paul.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Bati. Before I let Jenny speak, I just want to make sure we get clear about this issue of credibility of polls. You know, polls are not just conducted, they follow some scientific methodology. And that's how you have to check the integrity of the poster, you have to check the antecedents, and then there's sampling methodology. Okay, and of course, if they have been credible over certain point of time or so over the years, it is very unfair to you to, cumulatively say, okay, some people don't trust polls or something like that. So, but I think that because we know we can argue this, we know that the challenges we have, that polls are emergent in Africa. But I think that there's a learning curve, for us. So let me bring in Jenny. I see your hand raised up. I think that will be the last person to talk before we wrap up. Angela will give us a closing remark after Jenny's question. Jenny?
Yes, my name is Jenny. I'm so happy and excited to be part of the webinar. I'm communicating from Uganda, Kampala. I have a question, and my question is about what advanced mechanisms has the public policy in Nigeria put in place that is well protected, particularly in this period. What I mean is, if you realize that when it comes to public policy, most of the time, the people in the government are the ones most of the time who decide what to do and what not to do. So what is that mechanism that is well advanced and well protected that is currently being put in place that will make sure that this time Nigeria won't go back in the previous blockages of corruption, unemployment, and insecurities, plus the rest of all the uncertainties we know of?
Okay, thank you. I'll throw it up. Anybody can answer from the panelists? I hope you got a question.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be seen to be talking too much, but I don't know. Hello?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
Okay, if you permit me, I will try to be very brief so that I don't talk.
Yeah, just brief within 60 seconds.
Yes, what mechanism is in place? Look, if you ask me, I would say that the only mechanism that is in place is that the Nigerian establishment makes promises. The president told his ministers to focus on their job and not to get carried away with campaigns. But most of the ministers, they've been very busy with the campaigns. They are supposed to be ministers of Nigeria, but in the lead up to the elections, they have ended up as ministers of the APC, involved in very serious partisanship. The INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has also had issues of its own in terms of the commitment of its staff. There have been calls for the removal of certain resident electoral commissioners, with a specific example of the commissioner in Lagos, Olusegun Agbaje. But INEC has protected him because people say we don't trust him. The big challenge is the trust deficit. The Police Service Commission that is supposed to provide the lead in terms of providing security. One of the members, Najatu Muhammad, was selected to oversee the election in the Northwest and supervise the police. But she is an open opponent of the APC presidential candidate. APC had to petition. She had to be removed. So one of the things that Nigeria needs to work on, beyond all the details about political parties and candidates, is to ensure that going long term, to go back to Ali Ngweson's point, is to strengthen our institutions. The institutions are weak. If you don't strengthen institutions, what you will be finding in the Nigerian conversation is this politics of personalities. This person has support here, this person has support there. Okay, where are those institutions that can protect this democracy? Because the youth, the best way they can benefit from this process is to have stronger institutions in Nigeria, so that the police will not be killing young people, so that the judiciary will not be playing politics, so that policemen will not be irresponsible. It's about institutions, not individuals, in my view.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here, which says an attendee wants to know, is the international community helping or securing their own interest? What's the role of the international community in this election? In other words, is the international community helping or securing their own interest?
Okay, I don't know whether somebody else wants to talk about that.
You're
asking me.
Just hold it a moment. Let's hear from Eniola. NEB.
They are helping to secure their interest.
I disagree. NB.
Okay, are you done with NB? Are you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay, Dr. Bati, what do you have to say?
No, I disagree with anybody. I don't think they are defending their own interests. This is how to put it. We live in an international rules-based system to the extent that no country is allowed to behave like a rogue state, which is the whole argument about the Russian-Ukraine war, the first anniversary of which is tomorrow, Friday. And I think that the international community showing interest in the Nigerian election, as the same community has done elsewhere, all over the world, I think it's important for leaders, for politicians, to know that there are standards, there are values. I think it was Mr. Chung who talked about values, that this whole process is about values. It's not about people just behaving as they like. And I think it's important that the European Union Observation Mission has been in Nigeria since January. I think it's important that the AU is here, the Commonwealth is here, the US is here, the UK is here, Canada is here, everybody is here. And some of those countries have said, if you misbehave, we will not give you visa. We will blacklist you from coming to our country. I think that's the kind of strong language that Nigerians need to hear. And it's not about interference. It's just that we live in a global village where people are not allowed to behave like rogues. Values.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. I think we've got to go. But before then, I want to thank each and every one of you for making your contributions. This is very insightful. We are going to promise you that going forward, from time to time, when we have burning issues, we organize it. Some of that will be webinar, that will be face-to-face interaction, because not all the time that we have technology challenges. But before I go, I would like to invite the president of WAPOR SSA, Angela Ambito, to give her closing remark and vote of thanks. Thank you. Angela?
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm not sure you can see me, but I'm going to try to illuminate myself. I think first and foremost, to give a vote of thanks to every single person who has taken the time to stay on for the last 2+ hours to listen to this important discussion. It just reaffirms how important it is for us as Pan-Africanists to understand the geopolitical environment that we live in, and that what happens in Nigeria ultimately affects a person in Kampala as it would affect someone in Johannesburg and in Nairobi. And I think the more that we start, understanding what is going on around us, the better it will be for us. So Dr. Bati, I'm glad that you mentioned that the Canadians are here and the rest are here. But first and foremost, for us as to grow as a Pan-African region, it is important indeed that we ourselves are interested in what is happening with our neighbors. So I thank those who have been here. For the panelists, without your engagement, I believe that we would not have the consistent attendees on with the questions that have been asked. It is indeed also reaffirms that the discussions that you have had with us, the information that you have shared with us has been very useful for all of us. And I think, and I wish that somehow it will go to 3 important stakeholders. The first one, and Eniola is here, so Eniola may help, as with Dr. Bati, is that in the last mile is now, between now and Saturday, that the electorate actually feels empowered. We have discussed very critically the importance of the youth, but we know our youth and how it is also very easy to get them disengaged if they feel that their actions will not be taken seriously. So it is my hope that in the discussions that we've had, reaffirming their importance, that the youth of Nigeria will understand that the power of change stands in their hands. The second stakeholder that I think I'm hoping will understand what we discussed here is the political candidates and the political parties. Peter McMahon gave almost a free guide on what it is that they need to do. One, to get out the vote in this last mile, and indeed the last mile is important, but also to protect that vote so that in the end, nobody comes out and starts whining if they did not have agents where they were meant to have them. Let them, be ready and prepared for Saturday. And finally, to the vote manager, INEC. INEC is critical. We have seen it in our own countries that little things can actually dissuade the voter from coming out. So it is our prayer that somebody will, and perhaps they're here, will give the message that the job that they do in managing elections and enhancing confidence is critical. And so it is our hope that in this last mile, they will inspire confidence and they will manage those elections in a manner that makes us as Africans proud. Because we don't need other people helping us. We do know what we need to do. Finally is obviously what it is that we do as pollsters. I like a quote by one of the academicians who said, if you can't trust the public to give their opinions in polls, do not trust them to vote. And indeed, opinion polls are the worst form of garnering opinion apart from all the other ones, to paraphrase what Winston Churchill said when he said, democracy is the worst form of governance apart from all the other ones. So a bad poll is better than no poll at all, because it does indeed give you the indication. And I agree with the speakers, both pro and against, because indeed polls enhance and inspire different emotions, that we do need to understand the opinions of people. In closing, WAPOR SSA, that Paul and myself and Robert are members of, are urging you to become members, because we want to enhance democracy in our continent. And to do so, we would need people like yourselves infusing dynamism in organizations such as this one, so that our young people, our children and our grandchildren will feel confident enough that they can live in their countries, they can participate in their democratic processes, and they don't have to go to the US or to the UK to find a better life. Why do I say this? Because deep state does exist. Imperialism may still exist. And for us as Africa and developing nations to fight that imperialism that is political in nature, where our politics is determined because of our resources, natural resources, etc., we do have to work together. So I thank you for having sat here. Forgive me for inspiring certain thoughts. Some may be positive, some negative, but in the end, as Africans, we say it as it is. Ki sera sera, viva Nigeria, we are with you, and we are proud of where you have come to be in your fourth republic. We hope for the very best as you go out and vote. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you for everything. Thank you all the panelists, Dr. Franklin Group, Dr. Ruben Abati, Barrister Sonny Kwousi, Mr. Peter McMahon and Pam Sitoni, and of course, NEB, yeah? Mr. Yaniola of this day, and of course, finally, Robert Chong. So in fact, you are part of us now, so we can always call you next time. Thank you very much. And on behalf of WAPOR SSA, I want to wish you all the best and then enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.